This episode of the New Medical Nomads podcast is brought to you by Nomadicare. Now, personally, I love Nomadicare. I've used Nomadicare, and I recommend the company to all new travelers. What Nomadicare does is it takes the fear out of getting set up with a bad recruiter, which is the biggest fear that you have jumping into this journey. So they sit down, they interview recruiters, they vet them, get them on a list, and then provide them to you as a free service, as a free recruiter matchmaking service in order to get you started on your journey. Now, usually you only get 2 recruiters going through Nomadicare, but being a listener of the show, you can get 3. So this is how it's going to work. You go to nomadicare.com/Dylan. You will get set up with 3 recruiters to be on your dream team, as well as a guide to get you started on your journey.
Miss Kim Gipson, where are you at in the world right now?
Hi, I am currently in Matanzas Beach, Florida, which is like 10 minutes from where I grew up.
Listeners, welcome to another episode of the New Medical Nomads podcast. I am your host, Dr. Dylan Callier, and today I'm with Kim Gipson of Kim and Aaron G. And today we're talking about ultrasonography and travel and how it all fits together. But Kim, can you give us a little story about you, how you got into ultrasonography, and then we'll kind of get into the nitty-gritty of it.
Yeah, sure. So I've been a sonographer for 11 years, which is kind of crazy. And honestly, I just fell into it. I didn't really know what I wanted to do when I graduated high school. I actually wanted to be a flight attendant because I wanted to travel. Like, I've always had the travel bug. And so I thought I wanted to be a flight attendant, and I kind of decided against that. And one of my best friends was a sonographer. And I didn't even really know what that was. You know, I just thought, you look at babies, which is what everybody thinks. And so I went in and I just basically followed her around for the day to kind of see what she did and what it was like. And I was like, okay, I think I can do this. It seems like a great job. And I knew that it was only 2 years and I would graduate and start making pretty good money. So I decided just to go to school. And so I got into it and I was a full-time sonographer for 5 years and then started traveling from there. Cool. So yeah.
Very, very cool. So I don't know too much about sonography. Can you give us a little overview about everything that you might be involved with hospital care, outpatient care, kind of what your role is?
So we're in the radiology department. And so we use imaging to diagnose patients. And so essentially, we use sound waves to penetrate into the body with what we call a probe or a transducer, and we scan the body and we're able to see inside and actually look at organs and veins and arteries and hearts and babies. And we can really scan and see anything inside of the body. And so as a sonographer, you have a patient that comes in, and whatever there's a lot of different symptoms or different things going on, and you do whatever scan or exam that the doctor has ordered, and then we use the ultrasound as a way to try to diagnose and see what's going on inside the body. And we're basically the eyes for the radiologist, because the radiologist is the doctor who reads the exam. But as a sonographer, you're telling the radiologist what's going on. So if we don't see it as a sonographer, the radiologist doesn't see it. So we have to be really skilled and know what we're looking at in order to tell the radiologist what's happening. So it's really cool. And we do everything. We do babies, of course, but we do way more than that. We do hearts and veins and arteries and carotids and livers and uteruses and gallbladder, pretty much any organ in the body, muscles, tendons, we look at everything. And it's a non-invasive way to be able to see inside the body, essentially. Got it.
Yeah. What's your favorite thing to scan?
Oh, that's a good question. I would say vascular. I'm a vascular girl. Okay. I love arteries, veins, carotids. I like, definitely vascular stuff for sure.
Got it. Very cool.
Yeah.
So is this all done within a hospital, or are there outpatient locations? Kind of what are the different settings you're working in?
Yeah, there's outpatient centers. I've primarily only worked at hospitals. And in a hospital setting, though, a lot of hospitals do outpatients. So a lot of times you'll have an outpatient schedule, and then you also do ER. So those are all of your stat exams and inpatients. So it's a mix of all, but outpatient centers are out there. I haven't found any traveling jobs at an outpatient center. Which is where you want to be because there's no call, there's no weekends, it's great shifts, all the things, but I haven't seen those with traveling.
Got it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's get into traveling.
Okay.
So you had about 5 years experience before you jumped in. What is the typical amount of experience a sonographer would need before they can travel?
So usually it's 1 or 2 years. I know we work for AMN and they require 1 year of experience. But I always say it's not really about the timing. It's about your competence and skill set as a sonographer. So you really want to have a basic understanding and a really well-rounded idea of how to do a lot of different exams. Because you learn so much as a sonographer because you're going to be working with different doctors and different techs, and you don't have to know it all, but you really want to know the basics. You can work somewhere for, a year and work in a trauma center and get a lot of hands-on experience and learn a lot of different exams, and you're ready to go. You would be ready to start traveling. But you could also work for 5 years in a place that doesn't do a whole lot, and then you get out there and you kind of you're not going to be available for a lot of positions if you don't have a lot of skill set, I guess. So really working on building as much skill set as you can, scanning as many different kinds of exams as you can, and getting a lot of registries under your belt. We have different registries that you can get. So the more registries you have, the more valuable you are as a traveler.
What is a registry?
So we have ARDMS is who we get registered through, and there's abdomen registries, vascular, OB, OB and GYN, MSK. So there's all different registries, and basically you sit and you take these state boards, and it's just showing, hey, I'm registered and equipped and qualified to do these exams.
Got it.
So the more the better. The more the better.
Okay.
But, yeah.
That seems kind of like physical therapy. We come out as a generalist, but then from there you can get what they call specialties. So you can be a orthopedic clinical specialist where you're doing mostly kind of your typical PT, musculoskeletal type stuff. And then you can get neurological clinical specialists and pediatrics and geriatrics and kind of go from there.
Exactly.
Okay.
I will say you cannot start traveling. I would not start traveling unless you are ARDMS registered, which you could do an abdomen. You can do abdomen and you always have to do a physics with it. But I wouldn't even think of beginning to travel until you at least have that. And even now vascular is really, really important. So those would be the two things I would say try to get before you start traveling, because you'll just look more appealing to the hospitals and the facilities. So those would be the two I would say start with, and then you can kind of go from there, whatever feels good.
Very good. Very good. Yeah. All right. So that first day walking in as a traveler, what does that typically look like for a sonographer?
So for us, we work with different machines, our ultrasound machine. And so there's tons of different machines that we get to work with. And so first and foremost, you're going to get familiar with the machine if you haven't worked with it before. So learning the machine, and a lot of places do a lot of the same exams, but different places have different protocols. And so there might be different things that the radiologist requires, different ways of doing things. So you really want to learn the protocols of how they do things and be able to conform to do it the way they do it, and get really comfortable with that, learning the machine, meeting the radiologist, right? Because we build this relationship with them. You're new coming in, they have to learn that they can trust you. So you meet the radiologist, you meet the team, and typically I'll follow a sonographer for like a day and just kind of get like a lay of the land of like, okay, this is how the machine works. This is what you guys are doing. This is the flow. I'm learning the computer system, obviously. And usually I do that for like a day. And then it's kind of like you just hit the ground running. And then you kind of take over your own room and your own patients and you just go from there. But the machine and the protocols are like the things that are always changing at every contract. There's nuances with all of them. So those are the big ones.
Got it. So
and the doctors.
Typically to expect a day, have you been in a situation where you're expected to learn all that with like less than a day?
Yeah. Okay. It's crazy. Like I've had contracts where they've given me like a 2-week training, which was insane because that's not common in the traveling world. But then I've had a contract where I was there, the girl who I was going to be by myself, and the girl that was training me was only going to be there for half the day to train me. And then she was leaving and I was on my own for the entirety of the contract. So you got to be a quick learner. Luckily, like with ultrasound, the machines are similar. So once you get in there, you can kind of figure it out and you can learn how to optimize your images and learning the computer systems. Once you get that down, you can pretty much find your groove. But a lot of times it's like, hey, this is how we're going to do it. You can follow for a couple exams, see how it is, but like go do your thing. You're kind of on your own because a lot of times you're short-staffed and like need you to jump in. So that's definitely, the couple of hours was a little intimidating, but luckily I wrote everything down. I like just picked her brain, wrote everything down. She left. And then I had my little book that I could just go through. But yeah, that happens a lot.
Got it. Yeah. So currently the contract that I'm on now, they have a ramp up program, which is super nice, especially in outpatient. So around 2 weeks until I need to start seeing a full caseload. But my first contract, I showed up and I had 2 hours to kind of learn the computer system and take a HIPAA quiz. And then I had 6 evaluations, which is like a lot for an outpatient PT. And then 4 of them only spoke Spanish. And so no habla español. And so it was a lot of pointing and gesturing. And luckily they had some other workers there that were fluent in Spanish. So I could pull them in for a little bit for the help.
My God.
So like, welcome to traveling.
Just jump right in. I know. That is one of the things I always tell travelers is like, you got to be a quick learner. You have to kind of be able to jump in there and like figure things out. And not everybody can do that. I mean, not in all cases, but in most cases, you kind of just have to like wing it. You know, the difference of being a traveler and like a full-timer for sure.
Got it. Well, talking about this, talking about those specific kind of placements, is there anything that you especially have to ask for during the interview process as a sonographer?
So I always ask, how much call is there? Because in our field, there's usually, as a traveler, you're going to be expected to take call. And that can range anywhere from 1 day a week to, 5 days a week. It just depends. I've had a contract where the entire 3 weeks I was there, I was on call, which was insane. But I only got called in one time. It was a slow facility. But you want to know that because now I'm in a place where I don't want to take a lot of calls. So if the job requires that, it's probably not a good fit for me.
Got it.
So always ask how much call, and then what kind of exams do you do? Which is huge, especially as a sonographer, because if you're going to a place that does primarily pediatrics or transplants, something like that, elastography, different things that aren't that are a little bit more advanced and you haven't had experience with them, they would want to know that you would have to be trained, right, in order to be able to do those exams. And if some places are willing to train you and teach you and show you the ropes and some aren't, so knowing what kind of exams that they do and then realizing if it's a good fit for both of you.
Okay. So
I would say 9 out of 10 places are always willing to train. But being honest, I think that's the most important thing, is being honest on the exam. Like, don't fake it till you make it. Say, like, hey, I've never done transplants before, but I'm willing to learn. I'm a fast learner. and a lot of times they'll be willing to train you.
Yeah.
But a lot of places will say like, no, sorry, we need someone to hit the ground running, but that's something you want to ask. What kind of machines they use? Are you familiar with them? So you know going into it if it's something you know or something you don't.
Yeah.
And how do they work with the radiologist? A lot of times they'll present cases, case by case, to the rad, and you go over it together as a team. Other places you just send it through PACS and then you write up a worksheet. So how do they do that? So I always like to know what's the relationship between the radiologist and the sonographer. So those are kind of a couple of good questions. Obviously, what's my schedule? Is it going to be changed? Things like that. But those are some key points as a sonographer for sure.
Yeah. And I would especially comment on that. As a physical therapist, we have the option to travel as new grads straight out of school. And the best thing is just to be honest and say, hey, I'm new to this. I have my, fundamentals down. I, doing these clinicals at this location, but I am a new graduate. And so I most likely need a little bit of guidance along the way. And most places, if you're upfront with that, are okay with that. And they'll provide a little bit of mentorship, which is quite different from some of the other traveling professions that I've heard from.
Yeah. And it's so nice because you have this amazing opportunity to learn so much. I'm such a better sonographer now than I was when 5 years ago when I was working full time, because I've got to work with like the best of the best, and I've gotten to learn from them, and they taught me so many different things, and it's a really cool opportunity of being honest about it. So you're not showing up and they're expecting you to already know things. It's not going to be a good look. It all comes out. And so be honest. But yeah, you learn a lot, which is really cool. Really, really fun.
Very good. Very good. Outside of being on call, anything else that you specifically look at for like negotiations or in the contract before you sign?
For me, I always make sure that when I am taking call, which is most of the time, that I am getting that blended rate that we hear a lot about, which is basically just our taxable and our stipends kind of combined. Making sure that that's what I'm getting per hour for a minimum of 2 hours. And that's pretty standard. And that's what you should be asking for. And I make sure that's in my contract, because for a very long time, I was just making the hourly wage, which we know can be a little bit lower as travelers at time and a half. And so I was getting paid, say like, $40 an hour to get out of bed at 2 a.m. to go do an exam. And it wasn't worth it. So now I make sure that I'm getting that higher rate for on call, and it's 2 hours of minimum pay. And I've been able to work that out. And that should be like a standard for anybody who takes call for sure.
Got it. Okay.
So that would be really the only other thing.
Okay. Very good.
And that goes with on call, holiday, and overtime, any of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Is there any red flags that you kind of look for, whether that be in the contract or whether that be on the first day, that you're keeping an eye out for that might say that this is kind of a one of those situations where you might be a little more careful with what you do?
I think anytime, because on the interview, I always ask, why do you need a traveler? That's an important question, right? Because I want to know why they're bringing me in. And if they're like, oh, we had a mass exodus, or like we can't hire anybody, it's kind of like, well, why? And on my last contract that happened, and I wanted the job, so I took it anyways, but it was chaos, and there wasn't organization, and there wasn't a good flow, and you felt like you were just running around with a chicken with your head cut off. Very busy department. And so a lot of times if a lot of people leave, or they're not able to hire someone, there's usually kind of a reason there. And so it's something to think about when you're asking why they need you to come in. But other than that, I would say, no, not really. Those are the major things. Yeah.
Got it.
For
Got
sure.
it.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything else that we haven't talked about that you thought would be important to talk about for being a traveling sonographer?
No, I think I think we covered a lot of it. I think the main thing is like, if you haven't started traveling yet and you're still working full time, like really take this opportunity to get as much experience as you can. Like go to, you know, a high risk OB center or a breast center or a vascular clinic. And even if you're just shadowing people, try to learn as much as you possibly can so that when you do begin traveling, you're confident and you're able to take a lot of jobs that come through, because some jobs are very specific. So the more experience you have, the more job opportunities you have. So really use this time to learn, educate yourself, take registries, and really just be a rock star sonographer. And but you don't have to know it all, which I think is important too. You don't have to know it all, but have a good foundation for sure.
Good deal. Good deal.
Yeah.
Well, we'll kind of wrap up here. I know we're doing a second part coming up with Erin, but if any listeners out there, any new sonographers had any questions for you, where could they best reach you at?
Yeah, so we have a free Facebook group where we do all kinds of trainings and stuff for healthcare professionals, and that's Travel Life, Freedom and Scrubs. And then also you can find us on kimandaaronG.com, and that has like a bunch of different resources and ways to connect with us if you want to as well. So that's the best place. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Sure. And you guys also have a course going on, which we'll be talking more about in the Erin episode. But if you are a listener to the show and you want to support the podcast, it is an affiliate link. So if you click on that, some of that will be going towards the podcast, would greatly help me setting this up and getting these recordings out to everyone. But if you're looking for the next episode, I do the official launches on New Medical Nomads Podcast Facebook page. And then if you have any questions like for Kim or Erin, you can also reach out to them on the New Medical Nomads Facebook group. If you want early access to the episodes, just go to YouTube or iTunes. You can find us there. And of course, any like, comment, share is going to show us some love and get our information out to the people that we're trying to reach. But thank you so much, Kim, for being on. We'll take a quick break, and then we're going to get Erin on, and we'll be able to talk about IR technologists.
Sounds good. Bye.
All right. And all listeners have safe travels.